But Eleanor McClett is our manager of economic development, and I'm just going to let you take it away, Eleanor, since there's a lot to talk about and not a lot of time.
Thank you, Sally, and hello, everybody. I just want to do a shout out for, Lori talked about the reusable cup program, and want to do a shout out to Eclipse, who has a program going within their company. So their cups that are made out of husks are actually, you can actually bring them back dirty and I'll give you a brand new and clean one there. So there's a lot of this really cool stuff happening, and I was really excited to hear Lori talk about some of the implementations from businesses. I do a social enterprise workshop with our startup businesses to kind of get those thoughts going in advance. So it's exciting to see some of that move forward in our community. Okay, so for my presentation, I'm going to try and give you guys a bit of a demographic and economic update for the town of Canmore, and I've tweaked this one slightly to give you a little bit more relevant data as to the here and now. I can't see myself in the presentation. I'm just seeing my dashboard, so my apologies if it looks a little bit weird, because I don't know who I'm speaking to.
Looks fine.
Okay. So again, demographic overview, COVID impact, and a little bit of look to the future for what I can see kind of post-COVID, where the opportunities might be, and we can discuss that later. So what I'm using a little bit of as a data source is the situational analysis that was developed as the background information for our diversification economic development strategy. And so they use manifold super demographic data, Stats Canada and Town of Canmore data. So manifold super demographic data is a mouthful, but that's essentially they paid for that data. And so think about Canada Revenue Agency so that they can get better data on where people are actually working and that type of stuff. So in short, population in Canmore, according to the 2016 census, is just under 14,000. Since 2011, we've seen about 1.7% growth. Now, I will say that that's stretched out over the last, 15 years, and in 1 year, we have seen high growth numbers and other goes less. But we're estimating that we, at the next census, will hit over the 15,000, which will trigger a number of changes, which was discussed at today's finance committee meeting as well, in our how we pay for fire and police services there. When we look a little bit at the breakdown of Canmore, it's a very highly educated workforce. We have a high degree of our population have university or bachelor's degree or above, higher than most communities in our, and you see the population and age breakdown. So we have about 72% of our population is between 50 and 64. That doesn't mean people over 64 can't be working, but I just wanted to break that down for you.
Eleanor, you're sort of cutting in and out on your sound. If you can up your mic or something.
Okay, maybe I should do it without headphones and see, is that better?
Right now it is.
Now I can't. Bear with me. That would help if I didn't have my. Is that better?
We'll see. Yeah.
Okay. We will try that. And in this data, and I will note that this was done in 2019 research, so stuff might have changed in the COVID environment, but when we look at the top employment industries, accommodation and food services, and social assistance, retail, construction, and professional services kind of as our top employment, top industries and employment industries. So just to give you a little bit of background data there. And then of course, household values, we know that they're high. So that in 2019, we saw the median condo, apartment, townhouses around 550 and detached and semi-detached dwelling around 915,000. So in a little bit of breakdown, it's about 50, give or take, in housing supply at that time in Canmore. So Canmore businesses, so we have about 1,623 Canmore business licenses that were active as of June of this year. And just to give you a little bit of overview, there's about 230 retailers, 114 travel accommodations. Now, please note this also includes tourist homes, so these are not just hotels. Those could be bed and breakfasts as well. There are about 240 businesses working in arts, culture, recreation, and 264 in the construction industry. So this could be anybody from a developer, architect, your local handyman, electrician. That's kind of been dubbed under that, just as a bit of a framework there. And then this year we hit COVID, which shifted a lot for our business communities and in various waves. Currently we're in the second wave, and I can tell you that that's hitting our business community hard. I'll get into that a little bit further on. So according to Stats Canada, the 4 hardest hit industries are arts and culture, recreation and sports, accommodation and tourism, and of course oil and gas, as we've heard the province say a lot. And as you can see, that means 3 of the 4 hardest hit industries are, we have a lot of that in Canmore. And so a lot of businesses that operate in this sector and of course have been highly affected by COVID on various different levels. When we asked businesses in September about their confidence in survival rate, and it was the Business Development Bank that did a survey of community, looked 74% were very confident, 22% were uncertain. Those numbers have shifted federally a little bit. So sorry, federally it's 87%. In Canmore, it was 74% of businesses that were confident. So we're a little bit lower in the confidence level in our business community. That was in September, for some a good summer, but still challenging. Nationally, we saw, again, post-summer, about 63% of the jobs lost during the initial lockdown have been recovered. But that number was down about 21% in accommodations and food service and information, culture and recreation. So the job recovery in these sectors did not match other industry sectors. So they didn't rebound as well as other areas. And about 40% indicated that it would take them a year and a half to 5 years to recover from the financial impacts and the extra debt loads that they have taken on at that point of time in the pandemic. So unless they get grant funding, that debt load will only increase, and as such, the recovery time for businesses will also increase. So when it looks, so the BDC did the response of how entrepreneurs are responding to the pandemic kind of post-process, and consumer sentiment at that time was cautious and focused on reducing their own consumption and saving. They were focused on buying local and responsibly sourced products. 56% increased their online shopping at the beginning of the pandemic, and that number has only increased. And their focus was on health, and they like working remotely. So overarchingly, that has been a positive move for, it seems, a majority of people. When asking how entrepreneurs are responding, they were focused on restoring their financial health, taking advantage of technology, focusing on remote work, selling online, and reviving growth. And that was in order of priority. I would say that in Canmore that is slightly different. Focusing on remote work being at the bottom of that, restoring financial health and selling online being the higher priorities when we ask the same question to our Canmore business community. So their focus indeed, as I said, just trying to survive, restoring financial health, selling goods and services online, growth. So that's just as a comparator to what the national numbers were and what is the priority identified by our Town of Canmore businesses. And then when asked what supports they would need, the focus is really on cash flow, understanding how to access grants and financials, how to market to new audiences, technology for their business, and online e-commerce support is where businesses identify they need their help at this point. I did want to highlight for this committee some of the work that has been done to support our business community, and I'll briefly touch on that. So the business-to-business voucher program really is about building resiliency and connecting businesses to services. So, for example, some of the grant programs are complicated, and so connecting them with a that could help them do all the work in applying for grant program, setting up e-commerce. That's what that program funded. We partnered with the Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce on the Bow Valley Restart Grant, which provided the ability to cover some of the costs associated with opening under COVID restrictions, building neighborhoods, building art, community projects, and you've seen a lot of that in the media as of late. Online, there's a business hub. We send out over 40 updates with direct links to where people can find supports, webinars, etc. So a lot of those elements have come out of that work. I did really want to kind of focus on this one. The couple weeks ago, we put out a survey, and at that time, we saw about 67% said we're not considering closure, but there's still a large percent, 24% of businesses that is considering permanent or seasonal closure, and 100% of the seasonal closures are directly related to COVID. They cannot make enough money to keep their doors open and keep staff employed. So their opinion is, let's just close the doors for this season and see if we can reopen kind of post-pandemic or in a different season where we maybe can have more customers come to our door. I will also flag that of the 16% permanent closure, when we asked what their anticipation was if new COVID restrictions were being introduced by the province, and again, this was before Tuesday's announcements, the number actually jumped to 26% of respondents saying they could not survive. And I want to flag this as a piece when we see the closures of business, disasters, so the Fort McMurray fires, the flooding in 2013 here. Statistics tell us that of 1 in 4 businesses that is forced to close down during a disaster will not reopen. So as we see these business closures, and this is why we've seen the province kind of shift from closing everybody down to restricting numbers, because permanent closures or closures during that result in zero income also result in higher number of businesses not being able to reopen post. So a lot of quite heavy information in there for our business community, and I know that weighs heavy on a lot of. But I do wanted to kind of focus as well on what does the future hold for Canmore. In my opinion, you can absolutely agree or where the opportunities might lie for this presentation for as well. I'm in economic development, so my job is also to look at the silver lining and where the opportunities are. And I will say a number of things, I think, in our community. For every business that might be forced to close their doors down, there will be another one that says, this is my opportunity. This is what I've been waiting for. I'm going to step out into this new adventure. We've seen that on Main Street. We had a number of businesses closed due to retirements or getting out because they couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. And every single one of those locations has a new tenant in there. So we see that transition high in Canmore, probably different than in a lot of other communities. I see the opportunity in really, and I think this is where this task force really has an opportunity in social cohesion. Through the pandemic, it's been a lot of them versus us. It's people on opposite sides of the spectrum, and can we promote and support the community coming together in a united way and creating collaboration, a sense of pride and a sense of belonging and a sense of who we are as a community. And I love Sarah's presentation where she talked a bit about sharing what we have with other communities and bringing that joy to them. I will say that although we see a lot of tourists come to our community this summer, and the Main Street closure allowed us to accommodate kind of that spread and make it feel congested. Canadian tourists don't spend money like international tourists do. For a lot of our business community who rely very heavily on international tourists, although they are lower in numbers, they do tend to spend way more money per person. So for our businesses to survive in the diversity that we currently have, it will be important to see some of that international travel return. And then I think as Canmore, because we are a mountain community and the beauty of our location, there's an opportunity here for entrepreneurs that is not there in a lot of other communities. I can tell you I'm part of the Economic Developers Board of Alberta, and where communities have seen Main Street closure, they're not anticipating for the next couple of years to fill that space. That's not a problem that we've had here. We've had people come and say, this is my opportunity, and some really cool ones in sustainable clothing. So please go and visit them. I think that's an exciting development for our downtown. So that's kind of what I have for you. Happy to answer questions if there are any.
Thanks very much. Are there any questions from members of the task force for Eleanor? Seeing none, thanks for your presentation and for joining us this evening. Did Sally or Lisa want to introduce Lisa Brown?
Sure. Next up is Lisa Brown, who is our Manager of Community Social Development. And that department, in case you're not sure what that is, she will tell you, but it includes two areas known as the FCSS, the Family and Community Support Services, and the Family Resource Network, which was formerly known as the Parent Link. So Lisa, in addition to the administrative work, also oversees those two areas and is going to tell us a bit about social supports and those kind of programs that we have going in Canmore. So over to you, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Sally. I am going to share my screen and hopefully successfully. All right. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah, that looks good now.
And just making sure you could hear me okay as well?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Great. I have a quiet voice. So my name is Lisa Brown, and I am the Manager of Community Social Development, as Sally just said. And I've been asked to come and share with you some information on social and community supports within the town of Canmore to help you, the Canmore Tourism Task Force, with your vision and mission. So I actually pulled an old presentation instead of one of my recent presentations. And that's because part of what I feel that you're doing is sustainability, and part of what I do, I would say, is sustainability as well, community sustainability. And I think Eleanor said it really well when she just said, you know, it's about social cohesion. And we have a community filled with people who live here and filled with people who love and visit here. Right now, much of my work is pandemic focused, so which is another reason why I pulled an old presentation. So I'm just going to take it away. So my department's mission is to build a livable Canmore. And we do this through strength-based programs and policies that foster inclusive and resilient communities. Did that switch okay?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So we have my programs, which is Family and Resource Network and Family and Community Support Services. We work through policy, strategic planning, and social support programs. And our policy work includes things like the living wage, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but it's the minimum amount an individual needs to earn to have a decent standard of living in Canmore. And we have one of the highest living wages in Alberta. We also monitor through the Community Monitor Report, and that report is actually going under revision right now. So a really good opportunity for the Tourism Task Force to think about what needs to be monitored as a community, because we are looking at changing that report right now. But today I want to talk to you about the social support programs, because to me, these are the core of what makes and keeps our community sustainable. So our social support programs can be loosely categorized into 3 categories: prevention-based or resilience-building programs. And these are programs that build individual and community capacity, so that when people are in difficult times, like we are right now, they can come together, community, and even thrive. We have social safety net programs, and these are programs that are designed to either help individuals overcome challenges so that they can stay connected to our community. And we have intervention support programs, and these are programs that are designed to help those who are in crisis and need of urgent help and care. So my department, Family and Community Support Services, and the Family Resource Network, we focus on the first 2 categories. But we work carefully with community partners so that we can provide appropriate information and referrals to individuals who fall into the 3rd category. As another way of explaining what social supports are, I have a river analogy. And prevention supports is way at the top, right over here, upriver, before there is a crisis. So again, these supports are designed to give people the tools and capacity before there is a situation, before a situation emerges. The social safety net supports provide help where there is a situation that can potentially lead to crisis. In this analogy, it's right before the waterfall. So these supports catch people before they go into the waterfall, before they fall off the waterfall. Uh-oh. I love technology. And then the last is intervention supports. And this is once you've gone over the waterfall. And these programs support people who are in need of immediate help and are in danger right now. So prevention-based programs, like I said, they build resilience. These are upstream programs. And we know that informal connections to people and community is the foundation for our resilience. So these programs are designed to build community connection to both other people in your community and to your community itself. I don't have time to go into all of our programs, but I just picked a few key examples. One of them is our neighborhood block party, and that's our community trailer. So this is a tool to help you come together as a neighborhood, to meet your neighbor, to eat with your neighbor. The Mayor's Award for Volunteer Excellence. This is an annual event to celebrate volunteers, those who help build our community and that connection to community. And then Toys Together. It's an early years play program where families and children can connect. And many people tell our program that they've met their lifelong friends through these Toys Together programs. Right here, this is a picture of a virtual story time that we do, which is typically in person, but because the world is a bit different right now, we had to be adaptive, and this is virtual. So our safety net programs, these are programs targeted to individuals who need additional support. In our river analogy, these are the programs that catch people before they go over the waterfall. So they are not designed to deal with crisis, but without these programs, there can be undue stress, which in some circumstances can lead to crisis. So some examples of these programs include our Affordable Services Program, which helps individuals with income challenges participate in community. Our Infant Sleep Consultation Program, which helps new parents who are struggling with sleep find a healthy sleep schedule. And our Volunteer Income Tax Program, which organizes volunteers who complete simple tax assessment for vulnerable individuals within our community. And this program is key and important because individuals cannot access provincial and federal benefits and support programs unless they complete their taxes. And we've actually had stories of people who have not completed their taxes for 10 years. And then they've come to us, completed their taxes, and they were in a dire financial situation, but were able to get, in one case, up to $50,000 of supports that they were due, but they hadn't had access to because they weren't due their taxes. The picture here is our Beyond Curbside Garbage and Recycle Pickup program, which provides garbage and recycling pickup for individuals who can't use our bare bins. And then intervention support programs. So in our river, the analogy is people who've gone over the waterfall and are in crisis. So though my department does not directly provide intervention supports, we work collaboratively with community so that we can understand what supports are available and give appropriate information and resources so that we have a clear referral process to these available supports so people aren't getting stuck in the system. And so we can work with community partners to help build community supports where there are gaps. So some example of this work includes interagency meetings, which is a regular meeting where service providers connect and update each other. Our Homeless to Housing Coalition, which is a multi-agency group that collectively builds community supports for individuals who are without shelter. And then our provincial meetings. We sit on several provincial meetings so that we can advocate for the right resources for our community, for Canmore. So this is a bit of an outdated picture, but this is a picture of our interagency group and an event. So I will finish my presentation with a picture of our Grand Pen Pal program, which connects students with seniors in our community, and ask if I can answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Lisa. Christy, you have a question.
Thanks for that, Lisa. It's good to know of all the wonderful work that's being done. What would you say are the most pressing needs for our community from a social point of view?
So when I first started in this role about 5 years ago, I was tasked with developing a strategic plan. And what I heard was feeling like our community is being taken away from us was one of the things, and affordability was the second thing. So now I would say those two things are still pressing for individuals, that feeling like the community is being taken away from us as a community and affordability, but also the social emotional support piece, that needing to have that connection between each other because of the pandemic.
Thank you, Lisa. Jeff, you have a question.
Lisa, I'm curious whether it feels to you sometimes like tourism and the social support network are somehow inconsistent with one another. Like, do they meld together really easily, or is this a complex task to make them fit?
That's a complicated question. I think the things that you would hear is that people love the vibrancy of our community. The things that we also see. We'll see individuals who come to Canmore with a job, but no place to stay. Seasonal workers who lose their job rapidly and need support getting back to their home community or finding stable housing. And our cost of living is so high. So right now, the published cost of living is $22.76, but it's going to go above $30 when we publish the next one. And that's not super public right now. And we haven't presented that to council. But it shows that not very many people earn that in Canmore. So there is that feeling of, even though you earn enough and earn a lot, you don't quite earn enough to participate actively as a resident. And the other thing that really impacts residents is that our benefit programs actually, because people earn enough, they don't have access to certain benefit programs. A good example is our childcare benefit program. If you earn $18 an hour, you can get childcare subsidy. If you earn $18.50, you do not get childcare subsidy. So a $1 raise could maybe give you $4,000 a year, and you lose over $6,000 in benefits.
Thanks very much. Sarah, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to explore this idea a little bit of our community is being taken away from us that you said, Lisa. And if you could just expand a little bit on what that means, like who is taking the community away? If you have any indication of why people feel like that. Yeah, if you just could share a bit more on that, that'd be good.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a clear answer or that people really would have a clear answer. I remember when I first moved here 5 years ago, I've always loved Canmore and I've come here. My husband's family has had a cabin since the 80s in Canmore. So I came here often. And when I first moved here, the first question I would get is, and how long have you lived in Canmore? And I don't seem to get that anymore. And I used to think it was because people don't ask that question until I was speaking with another new resident who said, you know, it always feels like I get asked, and how long have you lived in Canmore? So I think to answer your question, we like our dynamic community. We like having big city amenities. And I'm trying to talk collectively from what I hear in our small town and the vibrancy. But at the same time, there's a recognition that people through affordability leave, or that there's always people coming into the community, or that there is people who are outside of the community and not part of the core coming in for a visit. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
A little. I mean, I think one of the things that we struggle with as a community is our community identity, because our community is so diverse and changing, and there's a large portion of our community that is more transient than others, but that's still part of our community identity. So I guess what I was trying to get at was, do people feel that tourism is taking their community away from them? Because I think if there is a sense amongst locals that tourism is taking something away, then I think that's something that we should very consciously discuss as a task force. Because I don't think that we feel that way on this task force, but if there are people in town who do, that's a very, like, that's a legitimate feeling that we should consider.
Yeah, and I would say it's probably a broad spectrum of people who have different beliefs along that continuum of very comfortable with tourism to not at all comfortable.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah.
This could, that question and answer could take me down a rabbit hole, so I won't go there.
I think Peter has.
It looks like Peter might have a question. Oh, sorry.
Peter?
Yeah. Hi, Lisa. I hope you can hear me here. You mentioned cost of living. I'm just curious, is this another term that you use for living wage? And if not, what is the living wage right now for Canmore?
So the published living wage, which is from 2018, it was published, is $22.76. But I mean, lots has changed since 2018, and we're about to publish another one. And it's going to be over $30 an hour. And so the living wage is different than poverty line, and it's different than a minimum wage in that it's the amount of money a person, and usually it's based on a 2-income, 2-child family, the amount of money an individual needs to make to be able to be active community participants, to be socially engaged in the community. So why it's different than the poverty line, which is the actual bare minimum a person needs to earn to not be in poverty, is because it's actually talking about thriving and growing, earning enough to thrive and grow in your community.
Okay, Lisa, there's actually quite a few economies of scale of operating as a partnership. Is any chance that that could be defined per person, considering quite a lot of our workers, you know, in that category are single?
Yeah, so we actually do calculate it for a single adult as well as for a single parent family, as well as for a 2-parent, 2-child family. But we usually only publish the 2-parent, 2-child. And the reason we do that is because it's not meant to have a judgment attached to it. If you go to this rec service and not to this rec service, it really is meant to be an indicator for community affordability. And the idea is that people should be able to be have a bridge to success as a working family within a community. So it's more of an indicator.
I'm just thinking it might be helpful. We do have a web page right now with a 2017 study that Lisa mentioned, and we could send that out with the minutes. And then Lisa is going to be bringing the next report of the living wage to council. And when she does that and it's public, we can send that to this group as well. It just might be, it gets at some of the questions I think you're asking about, Peter, and shows all the complexity of things that you have to consider when you think about a living wage. My favorite line that helps me remember what we're talking about around a living and wage is a decent and dignified life. That's sort of the difference between that what we're going for in terms of what Lisa was just describing around thriving. But we can make the information we currently have available and share the next report as soon as it's ready.
It's worth noting, I think, that the work we've been doing for several years around understanding the living wage is one of the factors that spurred council several years ago to move towards the really fulsome local transit program that we have, particularly the initiative to make our local transit free. So that's directly connected to wanting to reduce the living wage, and also the work that we've been doing over the last many years to encourage the private sector to start developing market rental housing. There's about 500 market rental units coming online this year. Some of them came online a couple of years ago, but again, the more inventory there is in rentals, presumably the hope is that the overall cost of rent will be reduced. So these living wage reports have been really germane to the discussions and the decisions of council about how we address some of these issues. Are there any other questions this time for Lisa? Seeing none, thanks very much, Lisa, for bringing your report forward. And that brings us to Mr. Asarte. Sally or Lisa, did you want to introduce Andy?
Sure. Last but not least is Andy Asarte. He's our manager of engineering. Andy gets all the really popular projects at the Town of Canmore. So he'll be updating you on those right now. Go for it, Andy.
Hello all. Just figuring out how to share my screen here.
Do you see it down at the bottom? There's the green thing that says share screen.
I do. I have a different problem happening right now though, unfortunately.
Andy, if you want to send me your presentation, I can share it for you.
Just give me 1 second. I'll give it another try.
Probably really, really big.
Okay.
Engineers, huh? What are you going to do with them?
It's just not showing up as an option. Just share my screen right now. And I apologize if you give me 1 second. Yeah, you'd think I'd know how to use technology. But I'm actually learning from my 6-year-old daughter these days, who shows me quite patiently how to use the iPad. Okay, I'm gonna have to send this presentation. I apologize. It's just not showing up as an opportunity to share it.
Okay, we'll send that off to Sarah, and she'll do the heavy lifting.
Or just make sure he's a co-host, Sarah, because that's what stops that from showing up.
Sarah, did you catch that?
Okay.
I did, yeah, I made him a co-host.
There we go.
Hey,
Good save.
Good job,
Hey,
Jeff.
way to go.
That's awesome, thanks, Jeff.
Okay, and I feel slightly better now that it wasn't necessarily my my struggles with the technology. Okay, so good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm going to be speaking on transportation tonight, and it was quite challenging to figure out a 10-minute summary. So I'm going to include with Sarah in the minutes some links that could be used to reference the documents we have on the town website and previous presentations that have been recorded. And you're always welcome to reach out to me for any questions that you might have. So for tonight, I'm going to briefly touch on transportation challenges, the planning that informs our work, and progress we're making towards our council-approved goals in the integrated transportation plan. In summer peaks, we see a doubling of traffic from our off-season lows. It's in the summertime, we're about 50% higher than average traffic. And that means we're all acutely feeling it. If traffic was always that high, like it is in anywhere in Calgary, their traffic's pretty consistent year round. If it was always that high, it would just be Canmore, but we get to experience this off season, and it means when traffic shows up in the spring, that's when the phones start ringing and people start clamoring for bigger roads and parkades and that sort of thing. When we look at how people move around in Canmore, we're highly constrained. We've got all of the typical constraints of a valley town: rivers, rail lines, highways. And then we also have unique constraints like our steep creeks. We have very narrow road right-of-ways and very, very expensive land. And so that limits what we can do with our transportation system. Our visitors arrive by car, being that the majority of tourism does come out of Alberta. And while we have some work to do to teach our visitors not to drive on sidewalks and paths, at least they're showing up with their big trucks with open minds, looking for alternatives. So our challenge with growth, we're seeing the majority of our core road network at capacity today and exceeding capacity into the future. And we expect on those peak long weekends in future years, congestion to be much, much worse. And while a typical approach would have us widening roads, building parkades, these approaches, there are many reasons why they're not advised for a community like ours. Even if we had the land and the space to widen our roads, or the money to build that expensive infrastructure and those parkades, the approaches have been shown to be short-lived in how long they're actually beneficial for. And they come with many, many long-term negative consequences that run counter to our values, and it would detract from our community and the tourism product we're trying to produce here, or the tourism product that we market. Our residents aren't living here, our visitors aren't coming because of to enjoy our parking or enjoy our highways. They come for the spaces, for the places, for connection with the community and with each other, and for the experiences that they have in natural areas and in our beautiful setting. So rather, our planning, it takes a different approach. It's one where we put a priority on providing people with alternative ways to travel, particularly during those busy summer days. And we set targets for those days for travel by car to ensure that the capacity of our network is maintained, and then through that set targets for what we need to achieve in terms of travel by other modes. And then we've developed road designs and programs and services that will move us towards reaching these goals. And while that's occasionally perceived as a desire to have everyone travel in those ways, it's not the case, where now we see 80% of people traveling in the summertime by car. We are looking at a summer where 60% of people are traveling by car, still the majority. And in that, a full third of people are taking all of or the vast majority of their trips by car. Another third are taking the majority by car, and another third are taking the majority by alternative modes. And by providing alternatives and encouraging people to use alternative travel, we can create for ourselves a community that functions more in line with our values. The values we've defined for ourselves over decades of engagement and planning work where there may be some question about our identity, I think our values are clearly articulated. And it's perhaps because of the negative changes that come with growth that we're looking to manage that we're sometimes challenged between our values and what we're seeing happening around us in the town. And those include values around social aspects, safer and more accessible roads, more public space, less noise pollution, a personal, really bothersome personal thing. We want connected communities, and we have a lot of value around health. And our economic values around the affordability we've heard of tonight, reducing the extremely high costs of transportation. It represents our second largest cost as individuals and societal, at the societal level. So by creating cities, really with roads, we're building cities, we're community building. It has such a large influence into everything that we do, and it really fundamentally influences the economics. We have challenges, we also have opportunities. For many people, Canmore is about being active, healthy, outdoors, and environmentally conscious. This goes for our visitors too. They're looking for the first opportunity to get out of their car and join us on the trails and in the parks. We have this really great pool of talented and experienced individuals in the community. Entrepreneurs, developers, and community groups have connected with the idea that paths, bike paths, transit means business and a better future for our community. And that's allowed us to pool resources with those groups and really push projects and programs forward at a rapid pace. Canmore, we have a really excellent network of pathways. Those pathways are accessible within a very short distance of most places where people stay, the residences and hotels, and it provides direct connectivity from those areas into our core. The opportunities in connecting that network to protected bicycle paths and sidewalks, to transit system, transit routes and transit stops, and through our busy intersections. Those really are barriers right now for us to see our share of trips taken by alternate modes really reach their potential. So together, creating those connections along with programs like the expansion of transit that we've seen and making it fare-free, improvements to transit infrastructure, parking management strategies, which include paid parking, but also looking to provide intercept parking as an alternative, and a number of other programs and initiatives that we can see that we will see a continued shift in the way that people travel. We've really just started in the long history of Canmore. We've really just started with these programs, and we're already seeing significant shifts. Our first integrated transportation plan, one that looked at alternative modes, was in 2013. And since that time, this is at our busiest intersections around the town center. On a weekday where we've been measuring, we've seen a shift of 96% of trips taken by car in 2013 to 85% when we're accounting for transit, which has started up since then in 2019. And on weekends when our traffic is peaking, the impact has been more pronounced, from nearly 94% in 2013 to approximately 80% of trips when transit's included in 2019. And at these intersections, we haven't at all changed the nature of the infrastructure. We've built some paths, we've built some bridges around them, we've improved connectivity around them, but the intersections themselves where we're measuring and the roads, the main roads, have seen very little change to encourage that shift. It's really happening broadly at a societal level. Where we have made material changes to the road design, the changes are resulting in mode share that's exceeding our most optimistic expectations. On Spring Creek Drive, 85% of trips recorded along the corridor in the summer of 2016 before project work there were taken by car, and today that number is 54%. And unlike the type of road investment that you typically see, widened lanes, structured parking, where the positive impact really happens up front and erodes very rapidly. Within 5 years on average, the benefit of those types of improvements is diminished, and you're seeing similar congestion levels. A project like Spring Creek Drive is going to see an increase in benefit over time as we connect out the network, build other projects, make a more cohesive network. We expect to see on this corridor and a number of others, the majority of trips in the summertime taken by alternative modes. Lastly, I'll touch on transit. By charging $2 per trip for transit, we're asking people to actually subsidize the transit routes. It costs far less than $2 to move a seat on a 40-passenger bus, the short distance from outlying areas into the town center. And so instead of asking a family of 4 to pay $16 round trip for that, we're removing as many barriers as possible to people traveling in a way that we want to encourage and that benefits the broader network. It benefits people who drive. It benefits people who are traveling in all modes when people use transit. And when council approved fare-free transit, we saw ridership climb immediately 60%. Once we get through the pandemic and with the great work that Martin and Steve and the crew at Rome are doing, we'll see that climb much further. So I'll close there. It isn't the easy route. Managing transportation in any community is hard, and doubly so when you're choosing options where the costs are coming up front. So the impacts of our work are felt immediately. You feel the construction at an intersection. You see a lane get reduced or narrowed. And the benefits come incrementally over time. However, encouraging alternative modes, it's not a luxury for us in Canmore. There really is no other approach that will be effective and fit with our values. And this approach is essential to preserving what makes our community great and allowing for us to grow sustainably into the future. So thank you very much for having me. I think what you're doing is a great initiative, and I'm looking forward to your questions now and keeping the conversation going.
Thanks very much, Andy. And we do have a few minutes in the agenda for Andy to answer any questions that may be provided. Christy?
Hi, Andy. Thanks for that. I just wanted to sort of pick your brain and say, like, what's the best case scenario for you for a tourist that comes to Canmore to grab a coffee on Main Street, go hike on a trail, maybe go sit by the river? You know, how would we ideally want them to arrive in our community? And then how would we like them to move around our community from a transportation point of view? Best case scenario.
I think we need to break visitors into two groups. Overnight stays and day trippers, and tackle those two separately. So if you're coming here and you're staying overnight, most likely you've got a place to park your car. You're in a hotel on Bow Valley Trail with one of 2,500 parking stalls that exists there. And so everything that we do when we're trying to look at managing people arriving overnight is to treat that as our intercept parking. What can a hotelier do to encourage that person to leave their car? How do we provide transit to the destinations where they want to go? Provide the mapping and the wayfinding so that instead of doing what they did 5 years ago, which is say, why would you walk downtown from the coast? It's a 15-minute walk and it's kind of nasty. That they do what our parking guy did when he came and he walked and it was actually 8 minutes. And let's make that a lovely route and give a person a map. So that's one group. Make sure when they arrive, they park their car and leave it and give them lots of good alternatives. The other is the day trippers. And so there are two approaches for them. One is they're arriving in 3s and 4s. And so that's an ideal use for downtown parking. Have them arrive, pay a fee for the impact that they're creating on the community. They pay money for that parking. It's a big impact. It's a big cost to maintain that parking. But then that's a really high value in terms of tourism. They're visiting for 2, 3, 4 hours, they're spending money, and then they're freeing up that parking spot for someone else. Alternatively, give them a spot to park outside of the town core and give them a bike share or transit to be able to get them to destinations. And so we're looking right now at where are the opportunities to do that, talking with Three Sisters and looking at their master planning, parks, talking with Alberta Parks about potentially shuttling up to the busy destinations on 742. So I think if we treat them differently and we come up with strategies for how to manage each, that there are ways to handle that. It doesn't have to be a defeatist thing where we throw up our hands and say, well, everybody's coming in a car, because it really is a manageable thing if we target it.
Thanks for that really comprehensive answer, Andy. And I just wanted to note that another initiative that we've been working with many of our municipal partners on is exploring opportunities for mass public transit between the Bow Valley and the city particularly. We're in very early stages of those discussions, but I think that's one opportunity, and certainly Martin with Rome could talk a bit about that at some point, but that's a big part of the puzzle as well, is to provide other ways for the day visitors to get out to the Bow Valley and still get around here. Stay tuned on those discussions. Are there other questions, Rachel?
Thanks, Andy. That was good to see that the alternative modes of transportations are slowly creeping up and rising. I was just wondering, on your 2030 slide, what are your projections on visitations for 2030?
What we'd have to tease the numbers out, but what we assumed was growth in background traffic. So that would come from visitors coming to existing development, as well as growth from new development. And it's fairly traditional in the way that's done. You pick a percentage growth each year and project out. And so I think it was something like 3% growth, which had been kind of our historic vehicular travel growth over the last decade.
Thanks, awesome.
I think I should move us on. We have a couple of other things on the agenda we want to get to. I would encourage members of the task force again to review some of the information that's provided on the town website specific to Andy's area. There is quite a bit of good information available through the town website, and if you can't find that, you could contact Sarah and she'll send you some direct links. It's another really significant area that we've been putting a lot of initiative and funding towards is addressing our transportation needs. So thanks very much for being here, Andy, and presenting to the group.